Okay.
I changed the name.
Hey, Trevor, you can turn off your camera and mute yourself until it's your time to speak, if you can.
Absolutely. Do you want Martha to come in as Martha separately with her?
Makes no difference.
I'm gonna, when I come back in, I want to come back in as Martha and Trevor. I'm gonna rechange the name.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Aaron.
Yep.
John or Xenia, Susan Kenward here. I have several people that are going to speak, but they're going to speak from my computer. So they're not going to come in as individual people because they'll be on my computer. They're here at the house. I can't hear her. Can you?
Sorry about that. So I believe during public testimony, each person is allowed to speak up to 4 minutes. And if they can each state their name prior to speaking, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, they'll say their name and where they live. Is that okay? Good. All right.
Sure, yes.
Thank you, Xenia. Thanks.
Mhm. Good evening, Ethan.
Hi, Xenia, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Can you speak one more time to make sure your audio is okay?
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you not hear me, Xenia?
We can hear
I
you.
can hear you.
Okay.
My audio cut off?
He was fine for,
Oh,
for
no.
me.
I think my audio is a little unstable. Could you hear him okay, Maya?
Yeah. Can you hear my audio okay?
I can.
Yep.
Yeah, I can.
No. Okay. How about you, Xenia? Can you hear my audio?
My audio is lagging on my end. The audio is lagging on my end, so I'm not sure if it's my connection here at City Hall or.
Yeah, your video seems to be a little slow as well.
I'm at City Hall, so I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, we'll monitor it.
Let me know if it freezes. Maya, I will be moving stations just to see if I can get a better connection. Okay, give me one moment here before we start the meeting.
No problem.
Hey, Xenia, can you hear me?
Hi, Dan. Zinnia is actually changing stations to see if she can get a better internet connection, but
Okay,
I can hear you fine. Thank you.
okay, great.
Okay, Maya, can you hear me better? How's my connection now? Can everyone hear me okay? Is my video okay? Okay, Chair Pont, I believe we're ready to begin the meeting if you are.
Thank you, Secretary Gamero. Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, June 30th, 2022 special meeting of the St. Helena Planning Commission. There's a couple paragraphs I need to read before we really get rolling. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of Government's Code Section 54.953 as amended by AB 361, which authorizes teleconference meetings under the Brown Act during certain proclaimed states of emergency. The Governor of California proclaimed a state of emergency related to COVID-19 on March 4th, 2020. This teleconference meeting is necessary so that the city can conduct essential business and is permitted under Government Code Section 54.953 in order to protect public health and safety of attendees. Consistent with Government Code Section 54.953, this Planning Commission meeting will be held via teleconference only and will not be physically open to the public. Commission members and staff will teleconference into the meeting by audio and/or video. This meeting will be conducted via Zoom webinar. The Planning Commission meeting will be live streamed on Comcast Channel 28 and on the city's website, barring technical difficulties. Those members of the public wishing to participate must do so remotely via Zoom electronic meetings in the following ways, either by logging onto the Zoom link located on the meeting agenda and enter the meeting ID, or by calling a listed number and entering the meeting ID. Public comment for Planning Commission meetings will be accepted via email to publiccomment@cityofsthelena.org. All public comments must be received by email by 3 p.m. prior to the meeting. Emailed public comments will not be read out loud, but will be publicly available and attached to the online Planning Commission agenda. Secretary Gamero, do you have anything to add for us?
Chair Pont, I do not have a slide prepared this evening, but members of the public who wish to participate during public comment can do so by dialing 1-669-900-6833 and entering the meeting ID 870-0687-2203. And the instructions on how to participate are also listed on the agenda. That will be all, Chair Pont.
Thank you, Ms. Gamero. Vice Chair Hale, would you lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Secretary Gamero, will you take the roll, please?
We have Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Segura is absent. Commissioner Rothfeld is also absent this evening. Vice Chair Hale
Here.
and Chair Pont.
Here. Thank you. That takes us to public forum. Under California law, public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the item. Each person's comments shall be limited to no more than 4 minutes, which takes us to number 4, consent items. Members of the commission or the public may ask that any items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action, for extended discussion, or for public comment. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. We have one item on the consent calendar tonight. That's the minutes of May 3rd, 2022. Does any member of the commission wish to pull that item for further discussion?
Just real quick, I don't want to pull it, but as I was not at that meeting, I'm not sure that I'd have to abstain from approving the minutes, and we don't have a quorum for that. But
If you were able to watch the video, you are able to vote on the minutes, Chair Hale.
okay, good to go then.
Mr. Walsh, do you want to chime in?
Yes, that is fine, actually. He can vote on the minutes if he had an opportunity to watch them. He could also abstain if he chose, and you could pass by a majority of the quorum. So either one works.
Thank you. Does any member of the public, Ms. Gamero, appear to want to pull this item for further discussion?
I don't see any members of the public who are raising their hands, Chair Pont.
Thank you. That means a motion to accept the consent calendar would be in order if someone cares to make it.
Make a motion.
We have a
Second,
motion. We have a second. Ms. Gamero, will you take the tally of votes, please?
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Vice Chair Hale,
yes.
and Chair Pont.
Yes. That takes us to public hearings. We have one public hearing tonight. An appeal filed by Susan Kenward and Diane Armstrong to overturn an administrative approval of a short-term rental permit renewal at 1702 Tainter Street in the medium density residential district. I will declare the public hearing to be open and ask if any member of the commission has any ex parte contact to disclose on this item. No, I do. I was emailed, I believe, 3 times by Ms. Kenward on this. The items were mostly processed, and I either forwarded them to Director DeRosa, or she was directly CC'd by Ms. Kenward on the items. That's all I've got. All right. Director DeRosa, who is doing the staff report for us tonight?
Thank you, Chair Pond. We have Senior Planner Heacock. Before he starts, I just want to thank, I know that a lot of coordination went into making this meeting happen, both on the sides of the appellants and applicants and the city attorney, planning commissioner. So I'm grateful that we could all find this day to have this hearing. So Mr. Heacock, take it away.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, Chair Pont. So short-term rental permits are valid for a period of 2 years. As required, the short-term permit holder at 1702 Tainter Street submitted a renewal application on March 16th, 2022. Upon receipt of the renewal application, and as required by code, staff confirms with the finance department that the applicant's business license is current and that all required TOT has been paid and reported. Staff also contacts the police department to request all police calls for service and/or complaints lodged against the property over the course of the 2-year permit. Additionally, staff confirms that the short-term rental permit has been inspected by the fire department within the last year. If the permit holder has a current business license, has rented their property on a short-term basis for an average of 60 nights per year as applicable, has properly been reporting and paying TOT, has fewer than 3 short-term rental related complaints filed over the 2 years, and has passed a fire department inspection, The planning department administratively approves the renewal, which is good for an additional 2 years. During this process, staff learned that there were 6 calls to the police department regarding the short-term rental. PD noted that all 6 calls were from the same neighbor, that the occupants were always cordial and compliant, and the officers had not observed nor heard any egregious noise violations upon their response or during contact. Staff consulted with the city attorney, who advised staff that they had the administrative discretion to interpret review of complaints against the property under section 17134-065D as meaning complaints with merit, not frivolous, unsubstantiated complaints, and that staff could still approve the renewal administratively. As such, staff approved the short-term rental for 1702 Tainter on April 4th, 2022. On April 18th, 2022, the planning department received a letter from Ms. Kenward asking to appeal the administrative approval. The letter was not accompanied by an appeal application or the required fee. Staff consulted with the city attorney yet again, this time for feedback on the appeal request. The St. Helena Municipal Code section related to short-term rental permit appeals is specific to permit holders that wish to appeal a denial of revocation and is not for other interested parties that wish to appeal. Therefore, we must rely on the general appeals procedures outlined in Municipal Code section 1708180B, which states that all appeals shall be made in writing and accompanied by the appropriate fee. Although the appeal letter was not accompanied by a fee within the 14-day appeal period, as a courtesy, staff accepted the appeal request. Staff then reached out to Mrs. Kenward and asked that she also complete the appeal application and file that with the associated fee. Additionally, staff is noting for the record that although the code specifies that the appeal hearing must be held at a regularly scheduled meeting and within 30 days of the appeal being filed, due to scheduling conflicts, this was unattainable, resulting in the appeal hearing occurring at this special meeting. Staff received written approval from both the short-term rental permit holder and the appeal applicant that they find this hearing date acceptable. Also, while not required, and in the interest of fairness and transparency, staff determined that the appeal should be conducted at a public hearing, as a new short-term rental permit application would also be required to occur at a public hearing. Of note, the owner of 1702 Tainter have had their short-term rental permit since March of 2014 without neighbor complaints or other issues until the appellant moved into adjacent property. Also, the short-term rental contributed $51,712 in TOT in fiscal year 20 and $81,350 in fiscal year 2021. Moving on to the appellant's grounds for appeal, attached to the staff report is a letter from the appellant setting forth the basis for requesting that the Planning Commission overturn the approval of the short-term permit renewal. In summary, they contend that there are often loud parties with the tenants playing bocce ball, drinking, using foul language, and disorderly conduct during the weekends and on holidays, so that they are uncomfortable being in their own backyard. They also contend that the local contact person does not answer phone calls and does not actually live in St. Helena. And finally, they feel that the planning director did not have the authority to approve the renewal without notifying the neighbors. As previously noted, as part of the short-term rental permit renewal process, staff requested all calls for service from the police department at the subject property over the 2 years of the permit. And as noted in the attached memo from Police Chief Hartley, 4 of the calls to the police department were determined to be unfounded. One was quickly abated at 10:14 p.m., and the occupants were found to be asleep with no music playing on the final call. Other than the one call that was abated at 10:14 p.m., staff has no evidence that any of the restrictions or standards of the short-term rental ordinance has been violated by the respondent. As previously noted, the respondent has had their permit since March of 2014 without neighbor complaints or other issues. Is somebody not muted? I'm getting feedback, I don't know. Mr. Fezden is listed as the local contact person on the short-term rental permit renewal application. If he is unable to meet the requirements noted, a different local contact person should be designated. Mr. Fezenden is available to answer calls and have a representative physically show up on site, the Planning Commission to determine if that meets the spirit of the code section previously noted. If it doesn't, again, a different local contact person should be designated. As described in the staff report, there's no code requirement to identify or notify adjacent property owners of a short-term permit renewal, and to date, our short-term renewal process has operated smoothly. Furthermore, there are several checks and balances in place to keep short-term rental permit holders accountable. The planning director can revoke a short-term rental permit at any time if the permit holder has violated any provisions of the short-term rental ordinance. Additionally, if 3 or more valid complaints regarding a short-term rental permit holder are received by the police department during the 2 years of the permit, the renewal automatically goes to the Planning Commission for consideration. Again, to date, staff has no evidence that the permit holder has violated any provisions of the short-term rental ordinance that require the renewal application to be denied. If at any time in the future, the permit holder should violate any terms of the short-term rental ordinance, the planning director can initiate a revocation of the permit. Additionally, the permit is only good for 2 years and will require renewal again in 2024. In staff's experience, the short-term rental permit holders have a strong invested interest in being good neighbors and responsible permit holders. As far as correspondence is concerned, staff did receive correspondence from a Michelle Wagner requesting that she be removed from the appeal application after the application was received. Ms. Wagner sent additional correspondence that is attached to the staff report that she doesn't want the short-term rental permit to be overturned. For these reasons described in the staff report, staff recommends that the Planning Commission determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of CEQA pursuant to CEQA guidelines section 15061B3 and adopt the attached resolution denying the appeal of staff's administrative approval of a short-term rental permit at 1702 Tainter Street in the medium density residential zoning district. That concludes my presentation, and I will be happy to answer questions when that portion of the agenda comes up.
Thank you, Senior Planner Heacock. Before we move on to the presentation by the appellant and the respondent, I would like to say that I appreciate the work by staff and the appellant and respondent to get us to this point. Our code is old and rather cranky. It's like a house that's been remodeled several times, but never done correctly. So we have parts and pieces that don't mesh exactly right. And I applaud all the parties involved for working together to get us to this point. With that, we'd like to hear the presentation by the appellant. Ms. Gamero, will you please watch the time on this? Ms. Kenward, Ms. Armstrong, you have 10 minutes, please.
Yeah, don't start the clock yet. Am I on there already? Can you hear me?
You are on.
Okay. So I don't think Pia is going to speak until later, so I'm going to take the whole 10 minutes. Good evening, and thank you all for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm Susan Kenward, and I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you tonight. Several neighbors are with me. Some want to testify about the impact of this short-term rental on this neighborhood. I submitted 3 marked exhibits to the staff on Monday and request now that they be included in the record of this appeal. Exhibit 1 is a true and correct copy of the staff report for the April 26, 2016 City Council agenda. This document was obtained from the city clerk. Exhibit 2 is a true and correct copy of the short-term ordinance printed off the city website. And Exhibit 3 is a true and correct copy of the renewal application of this short-term rental filed March 16th, 2022, also obtained from the city website. My comments will be backed by citations, and if you want more specifics, I'm happy to provide the information. Exhibit 1 is the legislative history of the 2016 amendments to the short-term rental ordinance. It is a compilation of the record of months of meetings, citizens, staff, planning commission, the city council input that began with a town hall session that drew more than 80 attendants and reams of comments. It's Exhibit 1, Attachment B, and accumulated in the council actions in April 2016. In 2016, the very first item on the council direction to staff to amend the ordinance was ensure that the contact person for each short-term rental is locally available, Exhibit 1, page 7, followed by increased enforcement mechanisms and efforts. In 2016, the staff wanted a formal codified renewal process, which is also in this. The legislative history and the 2016 amendments are relevant to this appeal because they demonstrate a council practice of allowing the planning director discretion to send permit requests to the planning commission, not withhold them, and also show that when the council denied to delegate discretion to the planning director or any other person, council knew how to do it and did so expressively. The council delivered a codified renewal process with specific requirements and procedures to inform the planning director what to do and when discretion can be exercised. They strengthened requirements and standards to improve enforcement and required the owners shall cause their renters not to cause a nuisance or other problems, as opposed to use the best efforts to do so. Notwithstanding Mr. Dimchek written objected to that change, where he also admitted there were 2 letters of opposition to the short-term rental as far back as 2015, 2016, Exhibit 1, page 112 through 113. They added the local contact person information to the city website so the residents knew who to call and that the contact person would be on the site without 30 minutes. Violations and misrepresentation. The short-term rental violates at least 2 restrictions and standards of the ordinance. In addition, the owners provided false and misleading information. The first violation is of the local contact person standard, Section 8 of the restrictions and standards. The ability of a local person to be available and physically able to be on the site within 30 minutes is an express requirement of the short-term rental ordinance and was of paramount importance to the council. In this case, the local contact, Trevor Fessenden, is not local. The ordinance requires Trevor to be physically capable of being on the site within 30 minutes. This is not possible. Trevor lives in Southern California, and no one disputes this. Given the history and language of the ordinance itself, it is more than absurd to suggest at this date, Trevor can just designate someone else to respond physically to the property, that this switcheroo meets the spirit of the ordinance, and that staff can deny my appeal and affirm the renewal. The action is equivalent to granting a variation or rewriting a material requirement of the ordinance by the staff without notice and hearing to the citizens, which you're not empowered to do. There is no spirit of the ordinance, just the rules clearly laid out. Each renewal applicant must file an application. I discovered that the owners provided false and misleading information on the renewal application regarding the local contact person. The owner falsely states that Trevor Fessenden's address is 924 Signorella Circle in St. Helena. On page 2, the owner falsely certifies that the property manager identified in this application will be available 24 hours a day to accept phone calls and will respond physically to the short-term rental within 30 minutes within the unit is rented and occupied, end of quote. The owner's false and misleading information and certification in connection with processing this renewal constitutes grounds alone to revoke this permit under the revocation provisions, which are 90A1. I submit that on at least one occasion, the short-term rental violated the ordinance restrictions and standards that permitted parties or gatherings that exceeded a maximum number of 8 guests allowed. That's 40I4. My appeal refers to an event with about 25 people in attendance. When I called the police and asked them to respond to noise associated with the event, they told me to go over there first to the house myself, which I did. And I personally observed a large group of about 25 people. One of the guests told me was the host, and it was a wedding celebration, which is, if true, is prohibited. But whether or not it was a wedding, the number of guests I observed at this gathering certainly exceeded the maximum number of 8. What is supposed to happen when the planning director learns of violations during her renewal investigation? She has grounds to deny the renewal, that's 65EI. She has discretion to refer the renewal to you for a public hearing. Although these violations come to light because of my appeal, the results should have been triggered more, not less scrutiny on the operation. The renewal of this application. Discretion. The decision to allow the staff to exercise discretion to examine the complaints and determine their validity is not authorized anywhere under the language of the ordinance, deprived me and others of due process, and is inconsistent with legislative history and the structure of the ordinance. Let's take these one at a time. Renewal Section D plainly states that if 3 or more short-term rental related complaints are filed over 2 years, a renewal shall be referred to the Planning Commission for action at a public hearing. That's 65D. There are 5 police reports related to the short-term rental in the staff report. The ordinance does not require complaints from multiple people. The ordinance does not grant the police and the planning department the right to conduct an internal review and dismiss a case without hearings from all sides. You are the body designated to make that decision. The exercise of discretion deprived me and my neighbors of our right to due process. When issues are flagged, the public hearing provides the fair and proper forum to determine whether a new short-term rental permit. The police can come and tell their side of the story, and so can the neighbors. I was never offered an opportunity to tell my side of the story or provide evidence to corroborate my complaints. The structure of the ordinance and its legislative history do not support the staff's right to exercise discretion. Where discretion is allowed to be exercised under this ordinance, it is expressively stated and only in 2 places. That's Renewal D, where it says give the planning director discretion to refer renewals to the Planning Commission. The other instance where the ordinance grants discretion is in the violations, enforcements, and penalty, which is 100. Discretion is also inconsistent with the legislative history of the 2016 amendment. The city staff wasn't asking for discretion. They wanted, I quote, a formal and quantified renewal process, end of quote, Exhibit 1, page 4. The tenor of the proceedings was not to allow the staff the discretion, but rather to remove them from the decision and to give it in favor of resolving the issues through public hearing. I was denied the right, and indeed I am made out to be a lone crank, when in fact the record includes complaints from others. Sadly, the staff report also shows the police department and staff commiserating with the owners about what to do about me, going so far as to suggest to the owners that they consider obtaining a restraining order against me, or that I should be charged with misuse of police resources. Staff report 27 through 29. These shocking revelations turn the enforcement provision of the ordinance on its head. And to what end, I ask? Sadly, all I can say, this is mean. It was outright mean. The violations of the restrictions and standards, false certification on the renewal application, and the unauthorized exercise of the staff of discretion are ample grounds for the Planning Commission to uphold my appeal and deny the renewal. Alternative, you might enter a finding that the permit should have been denied or revoked based on these violations. In either case, I request that you direct the city to refund my $1,600 fee I paid to bring this unnecessary appeal if the rules were followed in the first place. I submit the foregoing comments and citations as an Exhibit 4 and ask they be included in the record. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Kenward. How much time did she use, Ms. Camaro?
Exactly 10 minutes, Chair Pond.
Exactly
10
on
minutes
the
and
nose.
5 seconds.
All right. That brings us to the comments of Mr. Fessenden and company. Mr. Fessenden, you have 10 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, committee. Good evening, Susan and neighbors. Directly in response to her Exhibit 1 and the date she gave of pages 112 to 114, I'd like to point out the date of that was 2016. Prior trustee is a resident of St. Helena and was there at the time, so that one is irrelevant. Exhibits 2 and 3, as well as she brought up the 25 people on May 15, 2021. I guess I'm going to unfortunately put those all back to you, the Planning Commission, in the spirit of the code of the law. I was always able to answer the phone and deal with situations. I'd like to give you numbers. 2017, prior trustee rented out of 365 nights, 126 nights to 35% of the year, that property was occupied with different neighbors in the back, Dr. Brad Nitchinson and David Devon, who I'll bring that up later. In 2018, 154 of the 365 nights were 42%. In 2019, 148 nights of 365 for 41%. And then there's also some information that we're still trying to remain from a different trustee out of Arizona that ran their own platform. So you can see the property was busy. As of December 6, 2019, we have a new neighbor in the back, and I apologize it's come to this, Miss Susan Kenward and Tor. I'm just here to try to give the facts and to make sure that everything's done correctly in regards. The family that I married into has owned this property since 1986. Prior trustee made this property a rental with the city in March of 2014. These are all facts that have already been discussed. Let me go on and keep on talking now. In 2020, when I sent a reply to her, I made a mistake. There was 366 nights, but it still is 11%. It's actually 10.66% of the year that it was populated. 39 of the 366 nights. In 2021, 58 of the 210 nights, and now in 2022, 45%, which is 81 of the 181 nights. Property's busy, and I think the complaint that she personally has, referring to the applicant, is possibly with the city and the whole structure of the process. I don't think that she has a basis or she has proof of any problems in regards to this specific property, except that there were some liberties of the spirit of the law taken. However, they have been dealt with professionally, and we are willing to change and do what the committee and planning commissioners tell us to do.
So hello, my name is Martha Fessenden, formerly Martha Demchuk, and my family was the one that purchased this property. I'm the trustee of the trust of this property. My brother, Matthew Demchuk, was the former trustee who lived at the address that was first on the application for Signorelli. So when that was filed, he was living there at that address. Since then, I've become trustee, and my husband and I have been managing this property. Any complaint, and every time that anybody has called on anything, which has not been very much, we've responded immediately. We also have somebody in town, Rebecca Demchuk, who is Matthew's ex-wife, actually, and she is on call and able to get there within 30 minutes if we're not available at that time. However, we quite frequently are there in town, and Trevor has family that live there in town. My family lived there, owned the convalescent on Pratt Avenue. So we've been there. Trevor and I got married up there and actually had a reception at this house. So we've been there for many years. We've never had any problems with any neighbors before. When Susan did purchase this property, it was known that this was a short-term rental. And so she's been in contact with us, and we've dealt with any issue that's come up. We've also been in contact with the police department and responded to them. And as you can see by their findings, there weren't any complaints when they arrived at the house. The one time that there was a complaint was the previous trustee that was staying at the place at the time, but that was taken care of very quickly. And so I just wanted to reiterate just a little background about our family. I appreciate your time. You have anything you want to add?
I don't need to go through and quote codes and everything, I don't believe. I'm sorry it came to this. That's our rebuttal. It's in a family trust. I don't know if the commission knows. I know the neighbors know. As of June 28, it went on a multiple listing service. Prior to that, there was a sign coming soon on the property.
So we recently listed the property for sale.
The trust has made a decision to sell the property, unfortunately. So thank you. That wraps it up, Secretary. and chairperson.
However, we do have people that are coming and that have paid in full to come throughout the months of July and August, depending upon your decision. So we thank you for your time. We're here to help, and we want to try to, get this resolved.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Fessenden. Ms. Kenward, Ms. Armstrong, your rebuttal, please, if you wish. You have 5 minutes. Ms. Kenward?
Sorry, I forget, I'm not very techie. Am I on both now?
We can, well,
There we go. Okay.
your video goes in and out. Thank you.
Okay. That's me pressing it. I'm not very techie. We don't have good service here. I do have some rebuttals. We did have several occurrences where there were, I called in 5 because I didn't want to call in anymore because I knew I only needed to call that many in. I am sorry. I have to say that what Trevor said, that he was always available, is not my remembrance. I keep his phone number by our bed in our bedroom so that I can call him. And I would say not at the most half the time he was available to answer the phone. And so by allowing them to have a spirit of this, basically what you're saying is that the city council is then allowing anybody that certifies a certificate for this is allowed to misrepresent themselves, because you're setting a precedent by letting someone misrepresent themselves and then fix it later. That alone should get rid of this short-term rental. He also spoke about how many days they rented it. And I will talk about Brad and David in a minute too. Well, I'll talk about them now. I emailed Brad. They are in Europe. Brad and David, they're in Europe. I spoke to them about this. He told me that they had problems and he was willing to write a letter. When they moved out, they were sort of patched everything up. But I said it wasn't necessary because at that point, I didn't think it was necessary. I have one final comment about how many days this thing is rented. The staff report confirmed that in 2021, the short-term rental was in operation for 210 days and 70 days for use by the 5 family members, a total of 200 out of 365 days and hundreds of thousands of dollars for the ownership. If they rented it 1,250 times 210, that's over 200,000. This is truly a pure commercial operation in a small residential zone neighborhood. It's zone residential and this is commercial. They don't live there. I ask how you would feel personally, each one of you, if you had a short-term operation where you lived with 280 people, different people going in and out. It's time to revisit the short-term regulations. For those concerned about it, the impact of fractional ownership on residential neighborhoods, I ask how you would feel about this short-term operation where you live. It's time to review the short-term regulations and protect residents from unreasonable disturbances and change to the character of these small streets. Tainter is one of the smallest streets in St. Helena. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kenward. Mr. Fessenden, Mrs. Fessenden, you have 5 minutes to rebut if you care to use it.
Yes, please. I'm just pulling up that 210 days.
Don't rebut the days.
No, the days are correct. I'm not rebutting the days. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the actual. It wasn't 210 different properties.
No.
People come in here and it's not a professional. It is a family, a very successful family's trust. Somebody who's also served on commission was the prior trustee. Matthew Demchuk is very active in the community in St. Helena. He has 2 sisters and 2 brothers. This was his mom and dad's retirement house until his dad died of cancer in 2005, and his mom died tragically in 2013. The family decided, under Matthew's leadership, to get this short-term rental permit and has done everything correctly. I'm just trying to pull up exactly how many days. In 2021, the actual number, go ahead.
Well, I just want to, I would like to respond to the fact of Trevor's responding to any calls. I believe that is untrue. because he responds immediately to any phone calls from any of the renters or anybody that's calling regarding the property. We also manage another property that's in Kauai, and he's very diligent about responding to any phone calls by calling people back or emailing. So I believe that that is unfalse, and I don't think we can go back and forth about that, but that's, and the previous owners, we left with them on a good note, and there were no issues that I had at the time with them. So
But we were able to communicate,
we were able to communicate with them.
as was the prior trustee, Matthew.
There is a bocce ball court in the backyard. And as you can see by the reports, the police reports, most of them happened before the 10 o'clock time cutoff. There was only one of the, I believe only one, right?
Well, there was two.
There's two, but one was at 10:14.
Yeah.
So the complaints were for before 10 o'clock. So I just want to reiterate that as well. And we've been very forthcoming and very responsive to any complaints at all on this property. And so I just wanted to let you know that. And we do have Rebecca Demchuk is in town and able to respond to the property within minutes.
Before it finishes out its sale.
And we don't know how long it's going to take to sell the property. And I understand that anybody that purchases a property will have to get a new permit as well.
Yeah, don't worry,
So
Ms. Kenward, it's not transferable.
So this is probably only going to be a couple months that we're going to be dealing with this, and then it will be finished. So, and then you can decide if you would like to have the future tenants be able to get a permit as well, because we think it's a beautiful home. We visit it quite frequently.
We love the Napa Valley, and the exact number of those 210 nights, there was 42 families, 3 of which were direct beneficiaries. So you have 39 guests of the property, 3 people that actually knew the property in the fiscal year, January 1, 2021 to December 31, 2021.
That's in response to the commercial.
It's not commercial. There's 39 different guests, but it is busy out of 52 different weekends. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time,
Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Fessenden. That brings us to the part of the program where the commission may ask questions to clarify what they've heard from either the staff or the applicant or the respondent. Do we have any questions from the commissioners for staff or either party involved? I don't see any hands, but I have a couple, if I could, please. I would like to request that the city attorney essentially respond to Susan's statement that staff is not in any way, shape, or form allowed to make a determination on whether or not the complaints are valid. City Attorney Walsh, could you respond to that, please?
Sure. I think that the planning director does have some discretion to interpret the code and to try to implement it in the way that she thinks is appropriate. I think in looking at the language that provides for a certain number of complaints to trigger elevation to the planning commission, that she has the discretion to determine whether that refers to complaints that were found to have some validity or not. We discussed those, and based on the input from the police department, we're of the view that given that the police department felt that other than the one complaint, they did not have any validity, that they didn't rise to the level that would require her to elevate it to the planning commission automatically. Now, obviously, the planning director does have the ability to exercise that discretion, and in doing so, her exercise of discretion is subject to appeal to the Planning Commission. And that's really what we have before us today. Is there, Ms. Kenward called into question her interpretation of the code, and so we've allowed that appeal to come to the Planning Commission, and that's the appropriate process. If someone disagrees with her, then with Ms. DeRosa's interpretation of the code, that can be brought to you and then ultimately to the City Council.
Thank you, City Attorney Walsh. My next question is, I suppose, sort of a combination question for you and potentially for Chief Hartley as well. The police look for essentially criminal violations. Is that correct?
That is correct. We looked at and see if there's a violation of the noise ordinance.
Okay. So if there's a violation that would be civil in nature, too many people at the location, an unapproved use like a wedding, that kind of thing, the police wouldn't check on those. That would be responsibility of another party in the city structure.
That is correct. The police would not know all of the stipulations underneath that type of ordinance.
You've already got the California code to deal with as it stands, and adding to it is not part of your bailiwick.
That's correct. That when it's not something that the lay officer would even know.
So you checked for criminal, not civil violations. Thank you. A question to you, Ms. Kenward. Do you have any video, still pictures, audio recordings, anything that you can present that would indicate that there has been a violation of the civil part of the code here?
Well, as I said, I am not techie. In fact, I downloaded an app to try and record one of the nights. And first I tried to just do it on my phone by laying it on the fence. As I can say, it's so noisy in our house. Well, my husband will speak to this. You can't even watch TV. But I tried to put my phone on the fence, and I did make one recording of them screaming, but I didn't submit it because it's not very good. But in lieu of that, I have our next door neighbor, Pia Armstrong, who's lived here longer than I have for a long time, and her husband, to speak to the noise. I have a person across the street, and I have someone on Allen and someone on Stockton who are also aware of the noise. And people, and my husband, and people don't want to do this. They don't want to complain because they don't want to do this. I mean, people just don't want to do it. And I understand that, and I'm really appreciated these people were willing to come forward. So in answer to your question, no, but I got a funny one. I mean, I don't know if I should play it or not, but it's really bad, but it does show the volume of how loud it was.
Well, thank you. I'm given to understand by the chief's response, and please correct me if I'm wrong, either you, Chief Hartley, or City Attorney Walsh, that the police check on criminal violations, in this case, noise. That in this case, noise would also happen to be a twofer, because not only would it be a criminal violation, it'd be a civil violation for the short-term rental ordinance. But be that as it may, the other activities that you, Ms. Kenward, are alleging, the chief would not check on because those are civil, not criminal violations. That's why I was asking if you have any other indication at all. Seemingly you do not. That ends my questions. Does any other member of the commission have any questions for staff or the appellant or respondent? Yes, Commissioner Anderson.
If the police are in charge of checking on criminal complaints, who is in charge of checking on civil complaints? For short-term.
Director DeRosa, you want to take that one on? Or City Attorney Walsh, either one?
Yeah, well, so that's where our code enforcement comes in. As you are aware, our code enforcement is Monday through Friday during the hours, business hours 8 to 5. So if there are things happening in the evening, we do rely on the police department to note those items for future follow-up. And it's not atypical for small cities to not have 24-hour, particularly on weekend, code enforcement. I don't know if City Attorney Walsh would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, that is correct. I mean, the only thing I would add is that I would say if there were complaints for violations of, say, permit conditions or something like this, that it would, what we would need to see if they were occurring after hours is someone specifying that to the officer, and the officer may not, cite them for that or anything like that, but they would note that in their report, and then we would have some evidence of the violation, if it occurred after hours, because obviously the building official who does code enforcement for the city isn't available at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would typically see in that instance.
Thank you. Any other questions, Commissioner Anderson? Oh, Vice Chair Hale, please. You're on mute, man. Thank you.
I just have a question. If maybe the Fessendens can answer this. It was unclear to me the one complaint that went or was abated at 10:14. That one, they referred to that as that occurred when one of the owners was occupying the house. Is that?
No, it's not. The one you're referring to at 10:14, Commissioner Hale, is a guest. And that was in June 16. There was a beneficiary of the house on December 3. They both were abated. The first one you referred to, the disposition, was officer contact. The other one at 11 p.m. was occupants asleep. I am looking at the police department's report signed by Chief Hartley.
Uh-huh.
And there was 2 things where they were abated of the 6. Can I throw one thing that I didn't rebut with too? I'm sorry. Is this a timer?
If it's related to Vice Chair Hale's question, please. Otherwise, I'd rather not.
Not Mr. Hills, but it was the May 15 was a Saturday 2021 party at 4:52 p.m. Those guests was Sujit John. We had a language barrier with them.
Excuse me, Mr. Fessenden, no one's asking a question about that particular activity.
Okay.
All right, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I'd rather not bring up
I'm sorry.
a matter that hasn't, fine, thank you.
We understand.
Any other questions from the commission? No. All right. Then at this time, I'd like to open up to public testimony. If there's anyone who wishes to testify that is a member of the public, this is the opportunity for them to do so. Please limit it to no more than 4 minutes. Ms. Gamero, does there seem to be, I see a hand up, but I have no idea. Is there anyone out there, Ms. Gamero, who wishes to testify?
You can speak.
Okay. Hi. Am I on?
Yes, please. Who are you?
Are you a member of the public? Excuse me. I was going to look down the list of attendees.
Sure. Yes, I am a member of the public. My name is Michelle Mitchell. I live at 1662 Adams Street. That is across the street from where the Kenwards are. And thank you so much for allowing me to enter into record this statement. I just want to start very quickly with this Michelle Wagner removing her name from this particular issue. It's my understanding that Ms. Wagner is a part of the real estate company that is representing the sale of the property we're talking about. So it's actually hardly surprising she withdraw her complaint. But what I really want to talk about is this implication that this is all about one cranky neighbor, when what this is really about is a negligent owner. Now, if I had known when I heard tonight that fewer than 3 complaints means that the application can be renewed, if I had known that, I would have been at least 2 of them. And I live across the street and I hear this. I picked up my keys on January 5th, 2020. So I'm pretty new here. So again, I'm trying to figure out like, how do I navigate this particular town and what counts and what doesn't? And I don't want to complain too much because I came from New York City. If you complain in New York City, things happen. But what I found really fascinating when I sat down to listen to the initial statements tonight was the discussion about money, because it came up that the amount spent by the short-term renters, and I think I wrote this down correctly, was $51,000 for FY 2020, $81,000 for FY 2021. I'm not sure this is the defense that they think it is, because if I'm a full-time renter and I'm really happy to have my CPA supply exactly how much my husband and I have spent in those same 2 years, because it will far exceed what we have spent in this community, or in terms of what we have spent in this community will far exceed what they have contributed. And if this really comes down to money, which is what I keep hearing is the subtext of all of this, I think the Planning Commission has to ask themselves, what do you value? I mean, we're considering buying into the community. And what I'm hearing is that you would value a short-term renter continually tormenting. And really, I have to tell you, a bocce ball landing against a wooden fence is extremely annoying. It's very annoying, especially when you're trying to work. Both the Kenwards work from home. They do often conduct their business at home. It is impossible to do so with that kind of thing happening. And it's great that the owners make money. However, the balance is not exactly fair here. And so I would ask the Planning Commission, because I'm definitely taking a look at what you do for the record. What do you value? And if what you value is what a short-term renter does, and you only have 3 complaints, well, you can look forward to a lot more complaints from me. I have found this a very enlightening hearing. I'm so glad that I attended. I thank you all for your time. If anyone has any further questions, I'm very happy to answer them. I live right down the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gamero, do we have anybody else out there?
Yes, we have Pam and Jack Preston who would like to speak. Go ahead. You may do so.
Please.
Unmute. Can you hear me? Great. Thank you all so much. My name is Pam Preston, and my husband and I, my 7-year-old son, live at 1330 Allen, and we do share the fence property on Tainter. And we just wanted to reiterate that we have heard definitely repeated noise after hours and foul language, and having a young child and safety and community are top priorities for us. We love St. Helena very, very much, and are so grateful to be a part of the community. But we just wanted to reiterate that the noise has definitely been heard in the community, and that's really all. And I'm a former New Yorker, so I'm used to noise. But I think just the safety aspect with this certain property really exceeded things. So thank you for the time, and thank you for everyone for all of your words tonight.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, Ms. Gamero?
Go ahead and state your name, sir.
You're on mute, sir. You're on mute. You're still on mute.
There we go. Got it. Okay, my name is Fred Hipp. I live at 1331 Stockton Street. And, I don't know all the rules and regulations regarding short-term rentals. Typically, we don't have problems with short-term rentals because the occupants are respectful, quiet, and act as a neighborly neighbor, if you will. But this particular property, several times during the past year, it's been annoying. It's woken us up. The parties at the house, I'm not sure if they're parties or if the residents are more than noisy. It's been a huge problem. And if it was once, okay, I write it off to, a renter that, is not going to be here. But after several times, what do? I haven't called in, I kind of leave it. I hope for the best for the renters and that things will calm down, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. So, if I need to jump on and log my complaints, I will going forward. I understand the house is for sale, but that doesn't interfere with this. We need to resolve this shortly. And anyhow, it's a problem. And I've heard a lot of legalese tonight as far as who owns the property and what their jurisdiction is and what the city limitations are on enforcement. But the bottom line is, as a neighbor in this neighborhood, it's annoying. It's a public nuisance. It's happened several times during this past year. And what are we supposed to do about it? So that's my comment and my question to you. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp.
We have 3 more.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Carrick. I live at 1321 Stockton Street. Like my neighbor Fred, who just addressed you, I do hear noises coming from this property, and it is something that is very annoying. I have to tell you that for months I listened to Susan complaining to me. She would stop me in the street and say, Kathy, I don't know what to do. The people behind us and their rentals are just creating havoc with our weekends. We can't have people over for dinner. And I was the one that said, Susan, you need to start calling the police, because the only way you're going to resolve this problem is by documenting it. So there probably would have been many more calls to the police had I not eventually convinced Susan to start doing that. I have kind of firsthand experience in this problem, because on Stockton Street, we had a neighbor 1 block down who was renting out his house, and we were having the same ongoing problem. And we called the police over and over again. And guess what? We actually got a hearing in front of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission said, this is not acceptable. This property should not be a short-term rental, and the license was pulled. So I had a very positive reaction to the process. But when Susan told me now that she wasn't getting any help at all from the planning department, it really infuriated me. And I quite honestly have to say, unless we can bring back some community input and fairness to this process, you're not going to have any short-term rentals being approved in this town soon, because all of us as its neighbors are going to realize that we no longer have rights, and this is going to be a problem. So I think you need to think about being fair to us, listening to us, and being considerate to what this short-term rental is doing to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Speak. I'm Diane. I live at 1673 Adams Street.
Could you repeat your name, please? You weren't clear.
Diane Armstrong.
Thank you. Ms. Armstrong, you are shown as one of the people who filed a complaint. Thus, your time should have been used as either the appellant's main 10 minutes or the 5-minute response time. I'm going to have to ask our city attorney on whether or not it's fair to essentially give you 2 bites of the apple.
Typically, the applicant, the appellants, or the respondents can divide their time up amongst themselves and aren't treated separately as a member of the public. So I think you're correct, Chair Pont. Any of the appellants should divide their time up amongst themselves.
So I'm afraid, Ms. Armstrong, because you are the appellant, thank you. Ms. Gamero, is there anyone else?
I have another one, I guess another one here. I'm the husband of Susan. And, you know, I want to step back one moment. This is the last thing.
I apologize. Can you please state your first name? I don't think I
It
heard.
is Alan Tor Kenward. Most people know me as Tor. You know, I'll speak for myself. The last thing I ever asked Susan to do is call the police department. You know, I'm a Vietnam vet. I've been in the wine industry for a long period of time. And, you know, I'm a believer in a even ship. We have not had that here. We've had bocce ball, screaming parties in the back where a ball goes and literally you can hear it banging against the wall. We've had a lot of profanity, which is fine. You know, I spent some time in the service, so I'm used to that. The last thing, and my wife would back this up, is for me to ask her, which I've rarely done, call the police. I find it, and I hope long-term we have some sort of system where to have a complaint where you have outrageous noise, sound, and so on in St. Helena with everybody here, that you have to call the police and use that resource. I don't have a solution. We're not talking about a solution now, but I have always told Susan the last resort we have, and I guess it's the only resort we have, is calling the police. It goes completely against my nature as a human being to do that. But we've had to do that on numerous occasions because it was so loud and there was some obnoxious conversations going on. So I support my wife in every way here. I think this is a bigger issue that the city needs to address. And I really hope through the process here on this one particular complaint that we're talking about and the issue we're talking about here, that we come through at the end of this with some long-term, more supportive of residents in St. Helena, understanding of what we do and what we don't do and what we should do. Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenward. Ms. Gamero, is there anyone else, the public, who wishes to testify on this matter?
Doesn't look like anyone else is raising their hand, Chair Pont.
Thank you. We're down to response to new information or questions raised during the public testimony. I do have a couple. I don't know if any other members of the commission have a question that was triggered by the testimony they've heard. No? All right, thank you. Mr. and Mrs. Fessenden, do you keep records of that could potentially allow us to determine what the short-term renter did or wanted to do during their occupation of the property?
We accept reservations through the vacation rental by owner platform. For you to say what they want to do with the property, I'm not quite sure specifically what you mean by that question. They come across as they want to rent the property for those amount of days. And it's on a VRBO travel away platform.
And that's the only information you get. You don't get, we want to rent it for
there's communication.
2 days to throw a party.
No.
No, it is communicated with them. And there is a contract with them, as well as a security deposit taken.
Postings and all the rest.
Postings throughout the house per the STR permit about the noise ordinance, which has been shown to be unsubstantiated in regards to this particular situation, although inconvenient for a lot of neighbors that seem to get on the same Zoom call down there at the same time.
I'd like to reiterate also, we do look into the renters and where they're coming from and what they're coming up to do in the valley. And it's not like a party place where we're renting to
high school students
and college students. I mean, these are grown adults that are coming up to have a 50th, celebration, maybe to go wine tasting, that type of thing. And they are all very aware of the noise ordinance. And we do post those signs in every room of the house so that they are aware of the rules. And they've also responded when these complaints have happened and have actually given quotes.
Not all. Not
some of them have responded when these complaints have happened and actually taken videotape with the officers that have arrived and how they found that they were not
only were they unsubstantiated, there's a different side of the stories. There's there's the applicant, there's our rebuttal, as well as there's probably the truth somewhere in between.
These people are renting, they're paying money to come up for the weekend. And they're disturbed by having this.
They're drinking all day. I'm fully aware of what we do when we go to the Napa Valley. And I apologize that it's the bocce ball court that I keep on hearing from that Zoom call. And I don't know if that's the situation that's the most, but then I also heard that other people are saying about the words being used. I do question the authenticity of Allen and Stockton being able to hear Tainter Street.
Correct.
Pull out your map.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Fessenden.
Thank you.
Does any member of the commission have any more questions? No? In which case?
Chair Pont?
Yes.
If I may, I'd like to respond to some of the questions, particularly from Miss Kathleen Carrick about help from the planning department to Miss Kenward. So we realized the appeal process was not apparently as easy for her to navigate in terms of how to submit an application, pay the fee. But in the spirit of goodwill and transparency, we allowed extensions of deadlines, worked with her to make sure all the forms were submitted properly, and then went out of our way to create the platform to have this hearing tonight, which for a lot of reasons was quite a challenge to do. So, and we're also very full with other projects we're processing. So when we get an application and someone needs help, we treat everybody with fairness, consistency, professionalism. There were some hiccups with her exhibits apparently, but we were able to get those, as you saw, added to the agenda. So I'm disappointed to hear that. And I just want to make sure there's no question in the record that we treated her without any fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let me, if I can tag on to that. I did say earlier our code was a little wonky, but the way I read it, there's a 14-day period that got waived. There's a 30-day period that got waived. There's a regular meeting requirement that also got waived. So we had basically end up waiving all the time restrictions that are in the appeal part of the ordinance. So I would agree with your typification that the city has bent over backwards, at least city staff has bent over backwards to get this appeal out. With that, unless there are any other comments, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Somebody want to start this one off? Commissioner Anderson, Vice Chair Hale, have anything to say? Dan, you went off mute. He beat you just barely, Autumn.
I can start. I think in reading through the material prior to this and also in witnessing this meeting, I think there's plenty of kind of tempting off ramps of places to sort of get essentially off track of what our charge is here. And I think I don't doubt the sincerity of people's frustration that we've heard this evening. But I think procedurally and properly, we're here to debate or to sort of analyze the appeal that is before us. I'm not sure that it would be correct for us to include sort of complaints that showed up tonight. I think that might well be a standing lesson for moving forward, that yes, it's absolutely important to make a complaint, but without having done so, that information is withheld from our consideration, I believe. And perhaps Ethan can weigh in on that, but I think it's important that we kind of stick to our charter and stay within our bounds here.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hale. Commissioner Anderson.
I agree with Dan that I think that in this instance, we had a process in place for city staff and they followed it. I do agree that it's probably very frustrating to live next to a short-term rental. I'm not a fan of short-term rentals personally. I like full-time residents, especially with our housing shortage, but that's not what this meeting is about. So, I think that it would be appropriate to review the short-term rental ordinance and, put a process in place for keeping track of civil complaints. And we obviously don't have that in place right now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. to my mind, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on here. One, our code is a little shaky. We're writing the code, we're going to fix that, but for right now, this appeal is coming forward. The civil versus criminal, as Commissioner Anderson brought up, is a big problem. The police enforce criminal code. We don't have anybody here after hours to look at civil cases, but the code clearly states the quiet time is between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. when we have nobody here to enforce civil. I would suggest that if you have a civil complaint, whip out your cell phone and please record it. Looking at the list of calls that are in the chief's memo, it's pretty clear to me that one of the 6 is indeed a violation. The other 5, I think, are not proven because once again, the chief checks on criminal violations, not civil violations. If we had some indication that that really was a wedding, if we had some indication that there really was 20 people at the house, that'd be a different matter. But right now, we don't have anything that indicates that that was for real. I'd also like to say that money is not germane to our decision. How much money this property may or may not have generated for the city over however period of time you want to measure it is not something that the Planning Commission takes into account. It's not in our remit to do so, and we do not do so. Given all that, however, the code clearly says that the owner applicant shall ensure the occupants and or guests the short-term rental use do not create unreasonable noise or disturbances, engage in disorderly conduct, or violate provisions of this code. We've heard complaints from neighbors that may well be a violation of this civilly, but not criminally. And on top of all that, we've got the thing that this is going to be moot soon because the house is for sale. The average sale time of a house in St. Helena in that age, that price range, I think last time I read was less than 100 days. So this is going to be gone soon anyway. Since if we pull the license, would cut off somebody's source of funds. I'm looking for more proof. I understand, Ms. Kenward, but you have presented very little proof. I'm done. It would be appropriate, unless any of the commissioners have anything else to say, to call for a motion. Oh, that's great. I can't see the commissioners. Thank you. Do we have a commissioner that cares to make a motion? Vice Chair Hale, please, you're on mute, Dan.
I would move that we accept staff recommendation and determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of SECRA pursuant to section 15061B3 and adopt a resolution denying the appeal of staff's administrative approval of a short-term rental permit renewal at 1702 Tainter Street in the medium-density residential zoning district.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Anderson. Ms. Gamero, will you count the votes, please?
Vice Chair Hale,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
and Chair Pont.
Yes. Thank you all for attending. That clears this matter and takes us to new business. I don't see any new business listed. I don't see any scheduled matters listed, which takes us all the way down to department reports. Director DeRosa, please.
Thank you, Chair Pont. I do have a couple of items for our closure of our meeting today. The first is, as you probably are aware from the email sent today, is that our housing element is out for 30-day public review. Huge thanks to Senior Planner Heacock and the whole consulting team. As you know, this has been a really big rock that's we've moved, and you have been participating in that process this year. And so this is a really great accomplishment. And you probably also saw from the notice that you will be invited to a joint meeting with the council on July 21st to receive public comment on that. Again, you can reach out to Aaron or myself if you have questions before then, and we'll have a staff report that goes along with that meeting on the 21st. And then speaking of meetings, starting in August, we will be transitioning to live meetings at Vintage Hall. More information to follow about protocols from our city clerk. And then at the last city council meeting, we have a new planning commissioner that was appointed, and his name is Christopher Warner. He will begin in July, and I do have an orientation meeting that I'll be having with him soon, and to go over all his materials. And I know you all will welcome him and make him feel like a great member. And I think he's going to bring some great insight and skills to the commission. And related to that, Vice Chair Hale, as you know, this is your last meeting. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for your service to the Planning Commission. I believe you've been a member of the Planning Commission since November 2018 and Vice Chair since February of 2021. You have great attendance, and I really appreciate your candor and your leadership and your professionalism and your participation in all of our meetings. So, and if any of the other commission members would like to add their thanks, I just wanted to make sure that the evening didn't go without expressing that to you.
It's been really nice serving on the planning commission with you. I know we didn't always see eye to eye, but I always appreciated your point of view and sharing that, and it will be missed.
Well, Dan, I'm sorry to lose you too. We don't have a parliamentary officer, but you've acted like one from time to time, and I find that extremely helpful. You represent a viewpoint that generally isn't common on the Planning Commission, but it's good to hear another voice. And on a sad note, you're replaced by another lawyer. Thanks, Dan. Do well, whatever you do.
I just want to say thank you, Dan. Appreciated working with you, and I know we'll be working on projects moving forward.
Thank you all.
Thank you. As always, the agenda forecast is available on the city website. This is also the opportunity for commission members to ask for something on the agenda that they would like to see in the future, hey, Dan, here's your chance. Add something. I don't see anybody wishing to add anything. That brings us to the final item of the night, which is adjournment. Thank you very much. Adjourned.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan.